everybody, and you are very welcome to our next episode of our Money Matters Teachers Interview Series. Now, today it gives me great pleasure to interview Matthew Doyle, who is a teacher and the TY coordinator at Sutton Park School. I have a particular relationship with this school because, you may not know this, but the photo shoot that we had originally when Money Matters was launched was actually in Sutton Park. And specifically the reason for that is that another teacher in the school, who I had gotten to know through my work as an economics textbook author, he had actually looked at the book and gave us some feedback about it as it had been going through various different stages of production. So the wheel has now turned full circle because Money Matters is also being taught at Sutton Park School, and in around about a couple of years ago, Irish Life had also offered to sponsor a class set for various schools right across the country, and one of the schools identified was Sutton Park School because they had been so helpful to us along the way. So on that note, I am now going to bring our guest today into our screen. As I say, his name is Matthew, and let's get right to it and talk to him all about how he teaches Money Matters in his school. So first of all, Matthew, you are very, very welcome to our teacher interview series here today. Let's get straight into it then. So tell us, what is your experience of teaching Money Matters in Sutton Park School?
Hi, Susan. Thanks for having me on. It's a great pleasure. Yeah, so we've been using Money Matters now in the school. We primarily use it in the transition year program. I know myself, I use about 7 or 8 of the first units, and another one of the teacher uses the later units in the book for kind of an accounting and investment stock market series that she does as part of the enrichment modules. I suppose for me, it's about trying to teach the student financial literacy from a nice angle, you know, instead of kind of telling someone, oh, look, you always have to balance your checkbook, or any of the older ways of doing things. So I just find the book that, you know, it provides practical, you know, application of the theories that we need to teach students. Some of the activities are fantastic. You know, they can be really engaging for the students. I know there's one about going onto Canva and they draw what they, you know, their experience of money is or what they want their future, and like it's amazing what they can come back with, you know, and it really is a collage of where they go forward. And I suppose then, you know, when I think about it, like there's a real importance for students to understand financial literacy. And I think it's one of those areas that the education system can definitely provide for.
Well, if I go back through each of the 3 of the things there that you said, first of all, the old way of doing things versus currently. A lot of people talk about having a rainy day fund, but actually, Matthew, I really like the idea of having a sunny day fund, because what if a great opportunity happens? Like, what if I get a special offer on a holiday, or what if, you know, a friend of mine decides that they're going to get married and then they might be having a wedding in a beautiful part of the world that wouldn't be maybe as close to home as others might be. Or also, if we do go a little bit further down the line, maybe there might be an opportunity to invest in a business or other things. And I think it's far easier to save with the incentive of opening up opportunities like that than maybe something will happen if it goes wrong. The second one, what you talk about on Canva, I have done that loads and loads of times with teenagers where I ask them to create their vision board. And it's a lovely, dreamy sort of all I have to do is pull in pictures here, and I can imagine having a private jet, as some of them do, or some of them are walking on a beach, or some of them have a passport and lots of flags because they want to travel. So I really do agree with you there. And the role of financial literacy in our education system, I think, is, first of all, it's evolving, and it's found its way into different elements of the syllabus. Like when I was in school, the maths course never did anything with tax or scenarios around that, whereas of course now it does, and so on. So I certainly would agree with you there. I love hearing that the activities that you find are engaging. And can I just ask, can you tell us 1 or 2 stories about ones that you have run in the classroom that you found particularly caught their attention?
Yeah, so like there's another one. It's about their college budget, I think, or yeah, and like it's amazing. You know, like first off, you know, obviously we're dealing with students who are kind of 15, 16 years of age. Probably the primary support is the parents in terms of finances, and they're kind of, they don't really understand the expenses that are involved sometimes in kind of looking after oneself, and And I suppose it opens their eyes up to, because we're primarily in transition here, it opens their eyes up to, well, in 2 years' time, this is actually going to be me. I'm going to have to be doing a budget. I might be living abroad, going to college, or I could be down, I could be from Dublin and I could be going to UL, or I could be going to Galway, or I could be going anywhere, and I'd probably have to stick to a budget. So I think for me, the ones that are really practical to the students, that really resonate with them, are the ones that kind of stand out for me. I do know myself, I find the unit, How to Buy a House Without Buying a House, being one of the most fascinating. Students, I put it up on the board when we go in, and students look at me going, "You can't buy a house without buying a house, Mr. Taylor." And I'll kind of say to them, well, look, let's have a look. Let's have a look into this. How could we do it? And then especially the idea of looking at REITs and looking at, like, we can actually invest, because, like, I suppose it's the old adage of here in Ireland, like, what do you do with your money? You invested in bricks and mortar, but now, like, things have changed now, Susan, as you know well yourself. Like, there's so many opportunities and there's so many places for students and for ourselves and for anybody to invest their money. And I suppose having that little bit of knowledge that, well, I don't have to buy a house at 21, but I could maybe invest into a REIT, and I might be able to get money out of it then that could help me buy my house in the future, or save for my deposit for a house. And again, then also that understanding of, what's involved in buying a house. Kind of the chapter before very much breaks it down. What do I need to save? How much, is it going to cost me to buy a house? And it's easy enough for students to say, oh, I'm going to live here, I'm going to live there. When you break it down for them and they see how much they have to earn on a yearly basis, or how much they have to save on a yearly basis, they get shocked, really. And that's kind of, I always really find the pieces that shock students into kind of the light bulb nearly moment above their head, I think are sometimes the biggest learning and the deepest learning for students.
Well, again, going back to what you've said there, Matthew, that college budget is the tool in relation to consumerhelp.ie, the ccpc.ie.
Yeah.
And that, there's loads of life-changing calculators in there. Sorry, I should say calculators that refer to life changes as opposed to the other way around. But I do find that is really, really good about, like, moving out of home or going to college, etc. And you're absolutely right. The closer the situation, obviously the more relevant it is, and then that naturally feeds into engagement. The How to Buy a House Without Buying a House, yeah, you're absolutely right. So just for anyone who's watching us who isn't familiar with a term, that is a REIT. It's a real estate investment trust. So it's basically a fund where you can buy into a pool of property, and it's listed and traded on the stock market. So there's no lock-in periods or anything else like that. It's like buying a stock. But absolutely, like the scenario I give there for that character is Paul. He's got €3,000. He can't buy a house with that, and he wants to become a hotshot landlord in time to come. So, but that sense, as you say, that's actually a really good way of putting it, is that how can I actually go on to invest in property in bricks and mortar as a result of going through this? But also, I do find as well, Matthew, that because the websites that actually enable people to buy and sell these, there's an awful lot of information there. It's great. It's a great simulation in a way as well for a teenager to look at it, so that they can get real information, see how it changes, etc. So that's really interesting. That's what you do as well. Can I check in terms of, I have been out, as you know, to the school, like I mentioned in the introduction. So I've been to the library and I've been to the courtyard. What's your take on using technology in the classroom? Did you choose to bring in more of that or less of it?
Yeah, so only in the last number of years we have become a device-led school, and I think, look, I think the very nature of education is changing. The very landscape is changing. I think, I don't want to go back to the days of, teaching classes through my computer screen, but, I think it really gave the education system a kickstart into realizing the benefits of technology. And as I said, we've gone solely device-led here in the school. So again, like, one of the things that I felt with Money Matters was, a lot of the activities that were there lended themselves to technology, but also lended themselves to, group work. It allowed me kind of plug in I tend to use a lot of OneNote. We're Microsoft School in terms of Teams. So I would use, like, the collaboration spaces in OneNote for students to work together. But also, like, I think technology plays such a role in everybody's life, whether it be in the classroom or outside of the classroom, that, it would be wrong of us here in the school not to adopt some level of technology, and I think it's, as time goes on, I think it's going to become more important. And, like, I know there'll be other teachers watching this, like, there's nothing like a Kahoot to help out with a revision section of anything, it kind of, I always call it the head fake, like they're learning without really realizing that they're learning, and sometimes that can be a benefit in the classroom for anybody.
Well, any time that they put their minds to a real life situation and try to solve a problem, and Kahoot is a form of that for sure. Like it certainly is. I find as well, giving teenagers a task and letting them face the consequences of their decisions or whatever else it might be, and letting them learn from it. Whether it's a Kahoot, whether it's a quiz, or whether it's you have a budget and suddenly you could be on brown bread and water if you're lucky by the third and a half week at that stage. And we've talked a lot about, say, the individual activities at this stage, and it's interesting you call it being a device-led school. But what life skills do you think teenagers take out of learning about financial literacy in broad terms, then, Matthew?
Like in terms of what? Yeah, like I think one of the biggest learning for students kind of has to be that money doesn't grow on trees. And I know it's something that we hear a lot, like, money is a very precious resource. And like, I do a thing with first years, I try to explain to them, like, if you multiply out the years you're going to work by 12 paychecks, it doesn't look a lot. You know what I mean? Like, you only have a short window in when you can actually earn in your lifetime. And it's about trying to be as frugal as you possibly can with that money to support yourself for the future, to support your families. And I think also the idea of just that literacy part, understanding how to open a bank account, understanding how to, know what a debit and a credit is on your bank account, especially for young women in the workplace, it helps with closing that kind of, the gap in terms of pay structures. I just think, a better understanding of financial literacy for everybody in the education system, every student coming through, it is never going to, work against them. It's going to give them the tools to move forward.
Absolutely, they're certainly not going to work against them. But you've touched on so many different elements there. You have a period of time to earn, and then that period of time sets the foundation for your future. And then there's a lot of very clear, I'm going to say, employment / workplace / society issues around things like the gender pay gap and other type of pay differentials as well. And then, as you say, there's also simply the learning that comes from engaging with an experience, as we've talked about along the way. Matthew, I'm aware that we are, of course, recording this on the day of the summer holidays. So we're winding down 1 year and
winding down,
and of course you'll be powering up for another in a couple of months' time. So taking one look ahead to the next academic year, what are you, or indeed your other colleague, planning to do with Money Matters next year?
So as I pointed out to you, or as you said at the start, I'm the transition year coordinator here in the school. And I actually run the financial, we call it financial health module here in the school. I would tend to brief discussions that it's going to become, every student is going to have to take part in it. We're looking at developing another couple of enrichments to go alongside it. So we're looking at cryptocurrency module. We're looking at an AI and education module, and then there's another module as well that we're trying to develop so that students will rotate around and they'll all get an opportunity, and they will all, have a level of financial literacy. Because it's too easy to say, oh, look, you have an option to go and study financial literacy. Sometimes for students, and I know this from an educational point of view, it's like asking turkeys to vote for Christmas. They're going, I don't want to go and I don't want to learn about, APR or DIRT, or I don't want to learn about, they want to learn about cryptocurrency, and they want to learn about, how much money can I make off investing in Bitcoin? And, this is what they're getting, what they see in the media, and that's what they're playing. But the very basics, the very understanding of investments, the very understandings of the taxation system, the very understanding of savings and investments and pensions for the future, it is the basis of what that module does. And it's what I'm planning for them for the next year, is that all of my TY students should go through some level of financial literacy next year.
First of all, that's really encouraging to hear. And secondly, on both of those points, on cryptocurrency and on AI. So I think cryptocurrency is something I find the teenagers that I work with, and gratefully, anybody who's watched the series they'll know that I'm very grateful to say I work with tens of thousands of teenagers every year. And I find with cryptocurrency, the key thing that stands out there is the excitement of the influencer who's talking about them. But secondly, it's the volatility, is the fact that it moves really quickly. There's an allure of returns that don't I think necessarily meets expectation, but if they understand actually what it is about, or even the fact that it is a thing where prices can change a lot faster than APR, or that it is something that can fall as well as rise, like we know, certainly like we know the mantra that goes, or also even the ability to buy something that's liquid and sell it. There's an awful lot to be gained from that, and I wouldn't certainly just say, oh, cryptocurrency is all bad. In fact, there's a lot to be learned from it. There can be elements, all right, that are problematic, but understanding what it is and how it works, I think is certainly to be helped along. And AI, I mean, Matthew, it's first of all, it's everywhere. The teenagers that I work with often say to me, oh yeah, we do it, but we're not really allowed to. And it's that sense of it's something not to be pursued or not to be talked about. And I think there's going to be a real challenge in the education sector with how do we catch up with enabling an AI-based learning, whether it's prompting or so on like that. I am of the age, and I'm proud to say it, that I remember when you were allowed to use your calculator for the first time in business studies when I started in school. And I remember at the time there was this whole conversation of, well, if they're using a calculator, does that mean that, you know, the whole art of accounting or bookkeeping would be gone? And sure, as we all know, there's an awful lot more to accounting now than punching in numbers. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. You're obviously experienced, Matthew, in teaching it, and obviously it's been in the school now for a few years. But what advice do you give to teachers who are planning to teach this for the first time?
Yeah, so like when we got a hold of the book the first time, we actually sat as a department in the business department, and we looked at different, you know, across the business department, we would have obviously financial literacy to give to the students, accounting, business, and economics, and we looked at where could we use the book in, you know, to support our teaching in any way, and I felt that's where, you know, I think it's the first page or where the contents page, and it's linked to different Leaving Cert subjects. It's linked to learning outcomes, and it's, you know, it actually makes that job really easy for us. We sat down and there was nearly a scramble over who was getting what, you know, like I kind of ended up with, all right, I'll do the financial literacy piece, and the accounting teacher was like, great, I'll do the stocks and investing because they always love that, you know. I just think for any teacher, you know, if you're looking to develop some sort of, we call them enrichment modules here in the school, you know, in your transition year program, take out the book, have a look. Like you don't have, like nobody's saying you have to go from chapter 1 to chapter, I think 15 or 16, but there's so much in there, and there's so much, you know, really good learning. And it's like, it's stuff that's really going to help the student, you know, maybe not today, but as they get into the future in their future careers, like there's no harm in looking at it and trying to find and build a course around it, and it has been a massive resource to us here in the business department at Sutton Park School.
I am smiling about what you're describing in that first page, because that was Mr. Bain in your school's idea. That was entirely his idea, because at the time it was written in a chronological path, and I remember him saying to me, look, Susan, as in TY, we need to be able to dip in and dip out according to interests and all that sort of thing. So there, you can thank your colleague for that idea.
I will. I give him a big pat on the back later. Yeah.
Matthew, though, every year is different, and every student is different. And can I ask, how do you adapt the module broadly to either different interests or different learning styles, maybe learning disabilities, things that are happening at the time? How do you enable that student adaptation to happen?
Yeah, I suppose the book allows for it as well. Like, you know, I tend to, you know, it's a very hands-on approach to financial literacy. I've taken some of the activities and I've changed them to be maybe kinesthetic works. I know there's a fishbone model at one stage when we're trying to think about the marketing, and I actually have it on the page, and they've got the markers, and, you know, we've got different learners. You know, every student is a different learner. Some are visual, some are, you know, verbal, some want to write, some want to use their laptop, some need to get a hold of stuff. So I think using the different activities in the book helps with that. And then I think also that this, you know, we've obviously, a lot of us, you know, teachers would talk about junior cycle reform and the need and how we have brought on kind of group work. And again, a lot of the activities and a lot of the stuff here in Money Matters allows for group work. And I think that's one of those kind of very, you know, level the playing field for any sort of learning style in the classroom. Okay,
so and you're right, the fishbowl, I find, the fishbone, sorry, I think it's a great, so that one is where you have specific people who've got specific problems and how could you solve them, thinking through an entrepreneurial mindset. But I think graphics makes such a difference. Like, and I remember learning about the 4 learning styles of the literacy, the person who likes to read and write, and then you also have the person who likes to look at things, the person who likes to listen, and I'm actually the last one, which is the person who likes step-by-step guides, because there's great sense of not stability but safety in knowing that if I get one step wrong, I can go back one. So I'm glad to hear that is following through. Matthew, as we're coming to the end of our conversation today, I'd just like to finish up with 2 last questions. One is, what do you think is misunderstood about young people?
Misunderstood about young people. It's a funny question. And I don't think young people are misunderstood. That's the reality of it. I think that the perception of young people nowadays is that they're disinterested or they're disengaged. I hear social media is ruining them. They don't know how to communicate. They live in their phones. But I think it's actually a case of that, this is who they are. This is where they natively hang out. Whereas I played tip the can on the side of the streets. They play Call of Duty online, and this is who they are. I remember saying to a student, how do you sit and watch someone play computer games? And they say, how do you sit and watch someone play football for 90 minutes? It's just a change in society. And that's kind of, I have to be like, I know as an educator, I kind of got caught in my tracks and I said, well, you have a point, when this young man said it to me. And I think it's a case that they're misunderstood. I think it's a case that they're not disinterested. They're not disengaged. They just deal with media in a different way. They operate different than the way we do. They're very savvy. They're very technical savvy, and that's who they are. Like it's changed. They're passionate. I see passion in them around social justice, around climate change. I see them engaging in global issues. But they use technology as a tool to connect, to learn, and to essentially to advocate for their causes that they care about. And I think that's whereas we might have gone on prime time or we might have read the Independent on the weekend. That is there, but they're doing it through X or they're doing it through TikTok, and they're advocating themselves rather than looking for the content. If you understand what I mean, Susan.
Yeah, very interesting. I could certainly relate to everything that you're saying about this is who they are, and there is a sense of as much misunderstanding in the other way around, as in how did you do such things or how do you do such and such. So it's a very good point. I think young people are amazing. They really are. I think there's so many positive things to say about them, and I agree also with you. They have great senses of opinions about things, but I often find that they're intrigued when there's someone willing to listen to them, of which I am all the time. I really am. I'm very curious, and I think they've great unfiltered views, unformed in some cases, and that's fair enough. Like, give them a chance. But they're very, very refreshing. All right. And if I can then move to my last question, Matthew, which is, when you hear people saying, they should teach that in school, which was where CFA Society Ireland and I originally came together. Now, it wasn't my first time doing something for schools, but we really wanted to do something that would make a difference, of course, but stand in the teacher's shoes and look at the world, and then through the lens of the teenager, connect those two together in such a way where I would, as the author, never be present. And that's a funny old place to be in some ways. But what do you think when you hear they should teach that in schools? What do you think is their reaction?
Yeah, it's probably and sometimes it's probably coming from the person that misunderstands the young people. Like, believe it or not, the education system isn't bad here in this country. And I think in transition year, we had our transition year graduation the other day, and you wouldn't believe some of the things that students do throughout the year in the likes of transition year. And I'm only focusing in on that one area. We actually I actually think there's not enough of an understanding of what goes on behind the closed door in the classroom and how much education is there. Whilst I'm a business teacher or an economics teacher, there is real life kind of discussions going on. We were only discussing the other day about pension problems here in the country, in the economics class, and it became down to, well, would you be willing to pay more tax, or would you there's different conversations that go on all of the time in the education system. And I think, yes, there's definitely role for industry to come in and definitely be more part of the education system. I think there's a massive opportunity, especially from in the STEM areas. I know that like it has got so much better over the last number of years. I've seen more students entering Sci-Fests and BT Young Scientists. I know my group this year, we've entered now the last 3 years the Young Economist of the Year awards, and I think when education comes around and we embrace technology, and when leaders from outside of education come in and try and work with education, I think that the idea of they should teach that in schools will disappear, and I think that it'll be they're teaching that in school at the moment, don't you? And I think that's where we need to get to, is where people saying, sure, they teach that in school.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Inspirational words, Matthew. Inspirational words indeed. Well, thank you very, very much indeed to you for taking the time here to be with us, and also for CFA Society Ireland for supporting the book in the first place, but also for supporting the series. To Mr. Bain, as I say, who was a critical part of the journey at the stage when the book was in production, and to you and to all of the people in your school who teach Money Matters. And again, we want to give a shout out to Ilum, who started our connection also in terms of the class set that they brought forward too. So Matthew, thank you so much indeed. Enjoy your summer. Have a super and fantastic relaxing time over the next couple of months, and every best wish with Money Matters in September.
Brilliant. Thank you, Susan.
If you would like to know more about Money Matters, please do check out our website at thepositiveeconomist.com/money-matters. Thank you again to everybody involved in the creation of this series.